Welcome, Pat. It's good to have you on the webinar.
Good to be here. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for
Awesome.
taking the time to, sit down and talk about the farm and everything else. I'm really excited. As you can see, I got your selection of cheeses that we can try today. And I have a little bit of pairing over here. So, for my end, I'm going to have a lot of little fun here playing with your cheese.
Awesome.
Tell us a little bit, about what's going on as we get going here.
We are like all of y'all. There's a crazy world going on out there, and we're just kind of doing our thing. Thanks to Michael, we're able to do some fun Zoom meetings and kind of stay in touch that way. And so, again, I would love to have some interaction with everybody out there and asking questions and commenting, etc. I think that'll make it even more fun for all of us. But one of our first slides is of the dairy, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I don't know if a lot of you know about dairy. Everybody keeps talking about dairy being in trouble and why, and sometimes people don't know why. But if you consider that about half of the milk in America goes to schools, hospitals, businesses, restaurants, that half of the business has basically gone away for the last 6 weeks. And so if you're a dairy and you're used to producing X amount of fluid milk a day, and half of your audience goes away and you have no way of getting that milk, if people are used to sending their milk to us, for instance, to have it made into cheese, and or if they're used to sending it to a plant that is producing the little 4-ounce milks for schools, those plants can't just automatically say, well, why don't we just buy a bottle gallon jugs of milk today? I mean, their factories are not set up to do so. So our dairies are, some of them are at 50% of what they're sending out is not being able to be processed. And so they can't just turn their cows off and say, hey guys, take a break for a minute. So they're continuing to milk. So one thing that we have done that's been really fun is we are in the middle of a crowd fund raising project where we are buying that milk from our dairies, and we are making cheese and we're donating it to local food banks. We've got another partner in that. That's one thing that we're doing. And then a second thing that we're doing is, you've all seen like Got Milk commercials where they have the milk mustache and whatnot. Those ads are put on by the Dairy Council, and Utah and Idaho has a dairy council called Dairy West. And they called us up, and fortunately our dairy is able to send the milk that we're not taking to another cheesemaker. And so our dairy's in good shape, but a bunch of dairies are not. And so we are taking milk. Dairy West is paying a nominal fee for us to process it, just enough to pay for our employees. And last week alone, we donated over 16,000 pounds of cheese to local food banks. So it's really a good thing that we're able to keep our dairies around. We're able to pay our employees to work and not just lay them off. And the food banks are in huge need. So fortunately, we've been able to do some things like that just to kind of get through these times. It looks like a bunch of the restaurants and whatnot are starting to open up slowly, and this will be a good thing. And obviously we want to keep everybody safe, but it's very imperative that those restaurants get opened up, or else if this goes on too long, there's going to be some real serious ramifications.
You sent me a video. Do you want to talk about the farm?
Sure, let's do it.
All right.
I'll just talk while you're getting it up, Michael.
That'd be good.
So our dairy is, we've been doing business with them for 15 years since we started making cheese. And it's really a unique situation for us because this dairy is a 4th generation dairy, and they have done business with a company in northern Utah called Gosner Food. They make a beautiful Swiss cheese they've been around for like 60 years. And our milk goes to Gosner, the milk that we do not take here. And so that's Clint Wade, and he's the 4th generation dairyman. As you can see there, those are brown little Jersey cows. And we were out there just last week having a chat with him to see how he's doing. These little guys are about, they were between 1 day and 2 and 3 days old when we were there. That's our little Theo. He's a friend of ours. That's Katie, who is in our marketing department. You can see there that those are Holstein cows, the black and whites on the right there, and those are Jersey. There's a Jersey. And our dairy is half Jersey and half Holstein. And one of the things that's really fun about our dairy is, I don't want to get too geeky on science and whatnot, but every batch of milk that is milked in America, they do antibiotic testing, they do somatic cell testing. And what that is, it's an indicator of the quality of the milk. And our dairy has the ability, they are almost magical the way they do it. They're able to produce amazing milk with very low somatic cell counts. And somatic cells are basically white blood cells that mama cow produces. And if there's a lot of sick cows in the herd, those somatic cell counts will be very high. And if they have very healthy cows, the somatic cell counts will be very low. And so the standard in America is 250. If you go over 750, they'll shut your dairy down. And our dairy is always under 100,000 or 100 somatic cell, which is just amazing. So that's a good thing. It's just fun to see these little guys. Those little cows are so cute. They're very friendly. But good milk, good clean milk makes for good cheese. And when we get our milk, they will milk, and within probably 6 hours or less, we have milk in our tanks. And then within 12 hours after that, all that milk is cheese. So definitely within 24 hours of it being milked, it is cheese. And then we do it all over again the next day. We bring in the next batch of cheese. We start early in the morning. We start at 2:30 in the morning, and we finish at about 10 o'clock at night. We clean, get milk, and start all over again.
Cool. All right, so next up, I have a little bit of the slides on some cheese making here.
Oh, cool. So again, slap me if I get too geeky. I won't try to go into that too much because I think we really want to taste some cheese. But let's go ahead and I'll just kind of walk through what's going on with these different slides. This is Elohio. He is our cheesemaker. He's been with us for over 12 years now, and he is awesome. We love him. What he's doing right now is he is pouring the rennet into the batch of milk. So the milk comes in, we pasteurize it, it goes into the vat, we warm it up, and then the first thing that you'll do is you'll add your cultures, which are the bacteria that eat the sugars or the lactose in the milk, and they start to digest the lactose and make lactic acid. And then Elohio just added the rennet, and then 30 minutes after they add the rennet, the curd, as you can see, those things that they're pushing there are called harps. One is horizontal, one is vertical, and they will push those through the curd. It goes from milk to just a nice custard style. It looks almost like a custard style yogurt. And then we will cut that curd with these harps And when we do so, it cuts them into about 1/4-inch little cubes. Go ahead, next slide, Michael. And then those cubes are like little sponges. And what they do, once those enzymes, the rennet, starts breaking down those amino acids and those proteins in the milk, all of a sudden the curd does not like water anymore. They become hydrophobic and they want to get rid of that water. So those those little cubes are like sponges. And as we warm up the curd and as we stir it around, those curds, it happens in a really quick fashion. It looks like cottage cheese at this point, floating in lemonade. And what we're doing here is we're stirring it and cooking the curd. Cooking is somewhat of a misnomer because we only go up to 104 degrees, so basically the temperature of a nice bath. And so as we stir the curd and heat it, more of the whey is expelled from the curd. What's the next slide? And then you can see the curd will go settle into the bottom of the vat. And we should have maybe another picture. Yeah. So on the left there with the hands, the blue-handed gloves, that's what it looks like. The curd, it looks like cottage cheese, and it goes into a pack pretty quickly, and those tie together, and we cut those curds into slabs. And then the center picture there is when we're turning we're turning those slabs over, and that's a process called cheddaring the curd. And what happens is we're waiting for the moisture to come out of the curd. We're also waiting for the acid. The bacteria are continuing to make acid. And once the pH is perfect and the moisture is good, then down at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a bunch of curds that are being put through a curd mill. So those slabs go through the curd mill. And the reason I make curds in those, 2-inch, 4-inch long little curds is I'm trying to expose a lot of surface area. And then what I'll do is I will introduce salt. And the salt slows down the bacteria from making more acid. And so that's the reason why curds are made. And then next slide, Michael. Then I'll take those curds, I will shovel those into hoops that are lined with cheesecloth. And then I will, back in the right-hand corner there, just behind the guy in the blue, is the cheese press. And I throw those curds in the hoops in the press. And what I end up with about 4 hours later is I end up with a wheel of cheese. He's trimming off just any of the trim to make it pretty. And then next, I'll take those wheels, and depending on what I'm doing, for instance, go to the next slide, Michael. So Promontory, and then go to the next one. So there is Barely Buzz being made. I will take those wheels straight out of the press, and I will coat them with coffee, and then I will take that wheel and I will bag it, and that wheel is ready to be aged, and that cheese will be aged for about 5 to 8 months before you see it. And when we first started doing this process, it was crazy because we didn't know. We wanted to get coffee on the cheese somehow, but we didn't know what to do. So we took water and made like dirt clods full of coffee. We tried smearing it on that way. We tried a lot of techniques to get it on there, and nothing really worked. But then we figured out if we made the wheel just a teeny bit tacky with a little bit of oil, then we could take the dried ground coffee and rub it on, and it would stick. And so that's the way that Barely Buzzed has been made. But go back to Promontory, Michael, please. So Promontory, when we first started, Tim and I, we knew nothing about cheese other than we liked it. And so we went up to Utah State, and they helped us develop the recipe for our base cheese, which we call Promontory. And its best description of this cheese would be an Irish style cheddar. And the reason it's an Irish cheddar is because it has lots of extra fat in there because of the Jersey cow milk that we have. So Promontory is our base cheese, and it is the base from which we do all of our cheeses. And as you can see there in the middle at the bottom, the awards that we've won, Promontory is one of our most award-winning cheeses. A lot of people don't know it and are not as familiar with it as some of the others, because some of the others are a little bit more sexy, a little bit more glamorous. But the Promontory is the workhorse and the base from which we do all of our cheeses. So let's go ahead and taste some Promontory.
Cheese. So I got all the cheeses all lined up, and so the first cheese is obviously it's going to be Promontory. And a nice little healthy bite here. So tell us a little bit about the mixture, the milk and that, its flavor characteristics.
So one of the unique things about our cheese is we have our main, what they call a lactobacillus bacteria, which is our acid producing bacteria. And the main reason, as I mentioned earlier, the main reason for that bacteria is to eat lactose or sugars, convert it to lactic acid. The lactic acid helps in the aging, the flavoring, everything to do with cheese, that process. We actually do have two adjunct cultures that add flavor. They're different bacterias, and they add different flavors to the cheese. One of the characteristics of our cheese that people really like is it has a little bit of a sweetness to it. This bacteria is kind of a Helveticus, is the name of the bacteria, and it's somewhat indicative of American Irish style cheddars. If you were to have that in London, for instance, people may not like it as much, but us Americans seem to really like the sweetness of a cheddar.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love about the cheddars themselves is that they do pair up very well. I like to add a little bit of spiciness to it. So the chorizo, salami, and I have some jalapeno mustard seeds that are, pretty much, a nice little balance between that too.
Good. But it's really interesting. The different times of the year will end up with different milk. The components in the milk, the proteins and the cream or the fat will change. And it's really, we change our, what we're doing based on the time of the year. Right now we're coming into, it's called a freshening season, or the spring flush, they call it, the dairies. So we're ending up with large quantities of milk, but when the fluid goes up a lot, the components go down a little bit. So our cheeses in the summer are a little bit drier than our cheeses in the fall and winter. And so we're making a lot of, because we make multiple cheeses, different cheeses like different types of milk fat. And so we're making a whole lot of Teahive, for instance, right now. Teahive does not like a lot of fat as compared to like Barely Buzzed. She'll take all the fat we want to throw at her. So we're making a lot of Teahive right now.
All right.
So Barely Buzzed is absolutely the cheese that put us on the map. So after having made cheese for about, we started in September of 2005. It was like February, and Tim and I were in the make room, and we were like, you know what? There's a lot of really nice white cheddars out there. Why don't we do something that's a little bit crazy? You guys all know the Vella Dry Jack cheese that Ig Vella made years and years and years ago, back in the 40s. But he rubbed some cocoa on cheese and some pepper, and we thought, you know what? We can do that. And Tim, my partner's brother, is a coffee roaster down in Grand Junction, Colorado. and we had a bag of coffee laying around, and we figured, you know, you put cream in coffee, why not put coffee on cream? And we did, and we tasted it. We just made 2 little 3-pound wheels. This was in February. And then come, you know, August, it was the American Cheese Society was in Portland that year. And we grabbed we had a little family party, tasted the Barely Buzzed, and said, oh my gosh, this is really amazing. So we took it up to Portland, and we were passing it around with a couple of our peers up there. And one of them was from Central Market down in Texas. He tasted the cheese, Edouard Damez, and he loved it. He bought it on the spot, and we made him some cheese for the holiday season. And so Barely Buzzed was born. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's, you know, for pairing wise, you know, I remember that I was down at Uinta's Brewing and was doing an event and preparing and using a black lager has been one of my favorites. And you know, it was an inspiration to one of the beers that I did. And I just love the richness that you can get out of here. I mean, even with stouts, when you think of that, there's some coffee stouts out there that this really does work very well with. And what's surprising is with the tanginess on there, that pretty much goes away and brings out more of the butter. So you get this kind of like buttery cream coffee. You know, that's pretty amazing.
That cheese is really, I mean, I just got a call from our good friend, the grilled cheese truck in Washington, D.C. just last week. He says, you know what? It's my #1 selling grilled cheese on the truck and has been for about 13 years. I mean, it's great on a grilled cheese. It's great with fruit. It's insanely good with a medium red wine, brown beers, like you said. It's just a very versatile cheese. And one of the things that's unique about it is if you bring it to a party, people will, at first, they'll kind of raise an eyelid, like, no, I don't have things on my cheese. I just want the cheese. And I've told you many times, Michael, but we were at the Fancy Food Show in San Francisco, and we were waiting for a cab, and we ended up talking to this gentleman that had a big Swiss cross on his name badge, and we talked about what we both did. And he says, oh, you guys, what do you do? And I said, well, we make this crazy cheese with coffee on it. And he said, well, I know this cheese. I was in New York last year at the Fancy Food Show. And he said, I was at dinner, and out came your cheese on the cheese plate. And he said he kind of went into a tirade with his buddy saying, these stinking Americans think they can do anything they want with this cheese. And my Siri just kicked in. And his buddy said, you know what, dude, shut up. It wouldn't be on the cheese plate if it was no good. And so he tasted it, and he's like, he said, these brilliant Americans are getting away with things that they would be lynched for in Switzerland by putting coffee on cheese. But you know what? It tastes good. It pairs well. It's fun. It's unique. And it's almost a conversation piece. So Barely Buzzed has been just a highlight of Beehive cheese, and it's really put us on the map.
Yeah.
So Red Butte Hatch chili in the last year and a half since we've introduced it has become about our #2 selling cheese. It's such a good cheese. Red Butte is a garden at the University of Utah down in Salt Lake, and we donate 3% of the sales of this cheese to the garden. And the fun thing about this cheese is it's a New Mexico hatch chili. And so some people don't like the heat of chilies, but if you've had a New Mexico hatch chili, you'll know it's sweet and it's not hot, but it has tremendous flavor. And then, so we'll put the hatch chilies, fresh hatch chilies in the paste of the cheese. That's unique because we don't do that with most of our cheeses. It's really just on the outside. But then we'll take the dried, ground hatch chilies, and we will put those on the outside of the cheese. So not only do you get the fresh, green, wonderful chilies in the paste of the cheese, but you get the dried, roasted, kind of smoky flavor on the outside. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch, but really a great cheese.
It is an interesting combination of flavors because there is a little heat in there when you hit one of the peppers. But on the outside with the rub, it's got a sweetness to it that really balances out the buttery flavors of the cheese. I think it's really unique. I did some tacos the other night and grated it for the cheese for that, and it makes I think a big difference in the flavor of the cheese and the flavor of the tacos. One of the advantages that we have is that we can take one recipe and we can use different cheeses for it and actually create a lot of different flavor profiles. So it's kind of fun having that cheese, having a different cheese, using something a little milder, something a little spicier, all the way through. So it gives us a lot more choices just by adding a great cheese like yours.
I agree. It's really great in an omelet. It's just a fun cheese. I really like that cheese. Well, and like Michael, Peg Smith with Cowgirl Creamery, she's a great chef. Excuse me. And she taught me once, she says, I never just use one cheese in pretty much anything, a grilled cheese or an omelet or anything else. So she will combine different cheeses to get different flavors. So I would recommend that highly as well.
All right.
So this cheese, the history behind it is John Antonelli from Antonelli's Cheese Shop in Austin. Many of you know him. He was the president of ACS 2 years ago. But he gave us a call one afternoon. He said, I've got these guys from Basil Hayden, and they want to do a collaborative effort with a cheesemaker. And I thought of you guys. We got a hold of them. They sent us a bottle of whiskey. We actually bought a bottle of whiskey. We started playing with it. But this cheese is a wash. So we'll take the cheese, we'll wash it with it on the outside. And Basil Hayden has been around a long time, and it is the sweetness of the whiskey and the sweetness of the cheese and the fattiness of the cheese. It's pretty special. We love this cheese. It's really a great cheese.
I've been a big fan of bean products for a long time. When I was up with Alaska Distributors, the small batch bourbon collection was one of our main lines. So for me, I've always gone more or less the Knob Creek. It's been more of my favorite, and so I was actually unsuccessful in being able to get a little of the Basil Hayden today this week. So I'm going to have to just learn to live with a little Knob Creek in my old fashioned. So, having a cheese, with a spirit, a lot of times the alcohol can be a real predominant part. But what happens is you pick up a lot of vanilla out of the butter flavors.
Yep, I agree. And another, I'm not trying to drop names or anything, but Mary Quick, who makes one of the world-renowned cheddars in England, she was at American Cheese Society as a judge a few years back, and she said, Pat, the thing that I love about your cheeses is I'm buying cheese, and what you do, you always have a balance in your cheese. People are not buying a bottle of Basil Hayden, they're buying cheese. And by the way, it has an amazing, beautiful complement to the cheese. It's not trying to hide anything. It's not overpowering. It's just a complement to the cheese. So that's what I love about Basil Hayden and the Pour Me a Slice.
With all the choices that you have, a lot of people do the beer. There's a wine pairing on there, and like Merlots and other things. And to have something unique like this is really kind of fun to have at a party. I brought it out a couple times. Friends of mine that are huge bourbon fans, and we get to play a lot with that. And I think any bourbon actually in like any port in a storm works really well with it. But the Basil Hayden is a little more sipping, but works pretty well either way.
And Basil Hayden, we've had multiple conversations with them, and what a great partner they've been. But you know what? Their goal is to cross-pollinate with the cheese world. They're trying to get these younger kids to bring a bottle of bourbon to the party instead of beer and wine. And I think they're having some real success. It's a beautiful pairing.
I agree. Last and final cheese.
So Teahive, kind of from your neck of the woods in citrus country, but we love this cheese because it's pretty amazing. If you were to taste the Barely Buzzed side by side with the Teahive, you're going to get out of the Barely Buzzed, you're going to get some roasted, very almost a meaty characteristic to it, very robust with lots of lingering flavors. If you taste Teahive side by side with it, you're going to end up with a very bright, clean finish to the Teahive. The bergamot in the Earl Grey tea is so clean and so citrusy that this cheese with anything citrus is really amazing. We have a gal that works for us that cooks, and she does a cheesecake with this in the crust. And with this little citrus of the cheesecake and the citrus of the Earl Grey, it's pretty special. Very clean, bright finish.
I see what you mean. There is a really nice citrus there.
It's almost like a pellet cleanser. It just cleans everything up. It's really nice with bubbles. It's really great with, like I said, citrusy fruits.
Yeah, with the different flavors, again, using that in a recipe, you're going to get a lot more tanginess out of this. Won't be nearly as buttery, which is not a bad thing. It's not saying that that there's something wrong, that every cheddar has to be having a tremendous amount of butter to it. I think it's really nice that you have something that goes in this direction. You want a recipe that you want it to go a little bit more tangy. I think that this would be a great way to be able to go there. And the balance of this flavor does really well. I think, even with the mustard seed, they go really well. So, the crackers, I get a nice olive oil and sea salt from Rustic Bakery. So, just a nice little snacking way of being able to put these together. How long have you had the creamery now? What is your anniversary?
We had our 15th anniversary on March 15th. So just barely had our 15th anniversary, which is pretty exciting. Thank you, everybody, for keeping us in business. But yeah, I'll just run through these real quick. So Promontory, we've spoken about. Teahive was one of our very first experiments along with Barely Buzzed. We wanted something really Utah, and so it's a Redmond Real Salt, which is a product of Utah that's just an abandoned sea salt from the Sundance Sea in the central part of Utah, and a beautiful honey. We rub that on the outside. The fun thing about this cheese is it's not really savory, it's not sweet, but the honey and salt dry up the cheese a little bit, and it's just amazing, like on a Caesar salad. It's beautiful with fruit, and that's a real nice cheese. Apple walnut smoked is great with anything pork. It loves bacon, it loves charcuterie, it loves prosciutto. That one is my go-to for an omelet. anything that I have ham in. So really great that way. Barely Buzzed, we've spoken about. Big John was a chef in Park City, Utah. He came down and made cheese with us one day, had a bag of Cajun rub. We rubbed it on the cheese, and that has been one of our top sellers ever since. We love that cheese. A little spicier. It does have cayenne pepper in it, so it's a little hotter, but really a great cheese. Teahive, beautiful with fruit. Curds, we love curds. Curds kept us in business when we first started because, you know, we didn't have to age the cheese and we could sell them right away. We sell a ton of curds. We came out with a little 4-ounce curd pack a couple of years ago, and people are looking for natural, high protein snacks. And so we sell a lot of curds. Basil Hayden, Pour Me a Slice, is going to be a shining star for many years. And Red Butte, we spoke about as well. Just a beautiful, nice cheese.
This is Karen from California. Is there a reason we're tasting the cheeses in this order?
Promontory obviously would make sense to go first. Probably the strongest cheese that we ate was the Hatch chili, and sometimes that'll mess with your palate. So I probably should have done that one last, but we didn't. Barely Buzzed, you know, you would think would kind of coat your palate and kind of mess things up, but it goes away fairly rapidly. And so, Michael?
You know, I probably, you know, would have done it different there, but, you know, I have to say that you put a little bourbon in between each one and, you know, you really don't even notice it.
There you go.
All right. This is Ryan. He said, I love your cheeses. What resources did you and Tim use to learn about cheese making when you were just beginning?
I'll tell you a funny story, and it's a little embarrassing, but after we talked about making cheese, we took a little trip down to Salt Lake to a small little, it's a cool old gas station. They roll up the doors in the summer and they have produce and they sell cheese, and it's a beautiful shop called Liberty Heights Fresh. Steven Rosenberg runs it. And we went in there and Tim kind of walked me around the cheese counter and we talked with Steven and had some cheeses. And one of my very favorite cheeses, I actually wrote down the name so I wouldn't forget about it because it was really an obscure cheese. It was called Parmigiano Reggiano. So that's how much I knew about cheese when we first started. But Tim is a beautiful chef. He has always been a foodie. And we took a 4-day short course up at Utah State, an artisan cheesemaking course, of which one day we made cheese. And that was our education. We convinced Utah State to come down on our very first day of cheese making, and they made 2 batches of cheese with us and said, good luck. And we joined the American Cheese Society way up front, actually, even before we started making cheese. We took copious notes at seminars, and we've had a lot of friends. Do you remember Bingham Hill out of Colorado? Tim went and spent a week with them. And so the beauty of the cheese world is the collaboration that we all have and share and help. We had a lot of help from a lot of friends and a lot of cheesemakers. So those were our resources.
All right, just to clarify, did you take the courses at Utah State?
We did.
Okay. And also, what made you choose Utah to headquarters your company?
That's where we're from.
Well, that made it pretty easy.
There you go. We're 5 generations of Utahns. So.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yep.
Pat, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out coming today. It's always a pleasure to be able to see you. You know, I know that we can't get together currently, but this made a really nice, fun way of being able to kind of connect a little bit. It was great seeing the farm. A lot of times we think about the cheese making that you do, but when you make cheese, you're also supporting a dairy, you're supporting the families. And so it's not just your cheese making, it's also everything that goes into it. And we greatly appreciate all that you do. And, you know, again, congratulations on your 15 years. And hopefully it'll just continue going. We'll get through this. And, you know, just love you, man. So hopefully we'll be together sometime soon.
We will. And thank you for everybody that tuned in. And Michael, you're awesome. Have a great day.
All right, you too. You take care.
You.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.